Hello, everyone. We're going to get started now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Donna Allegata, and I'm serving as the moderator, teaming up with a number of our partners from the. I'm sorry. I'm just watching the slides. Move up to the beginning. Glancing at the opening slide. Next slide would be I'm Donna Allegata from the Center. Sorry, there it goes. Thank you very much. From the SAMHSA's S&G FTA Center. I apologize. We're getting started now, and being part of the welcome on behalf of SAMHSA and the VA, we have a number of expert presenters here. We have today Cicely Burrows-McElwin, who is the Military and Veteran Affairs Liaison from SAMHSA, is out on leave today, and I'm going to be teamed up with Dr. Edgar Villarreal, who's going to help to introduce the session, and I'm going to pass that over to you and the rest of the team. And so let's start right there. Edgar?
Yeah, good afternoon and good morning, wherever you might be joining us from. Thank you, Donna and our SAMHSA SMVFTA Center for helping us coordinate these great technical assistance calls for the benefit of the great work that our Governors and Mayors Challenge teams are doing. Just wanted to briefly introduce myself. Again, I'm Dr. Edgar Villarreal. I'm a psychologist by trade. I am currently working with our National VA Program Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, the Governor's Challenge liaison between our Governor's Challenge and Mayor's Challenge teams in our National Program Office. You may recognize my voice or have seen me pop in and out of a lot of the great work and site visits that you guys are currently a part of. Like Donna mentioned, unfortunately, Cicely is not able to join us today, but again, on behalf of our SAMHSA TA Center and our SAMHSA partners, we would like to welcome you here today. We're really excited to have our presenters join us to really share a lot of the great innovations on safety planning as we transition to more virtual options, as we adjust and adapt in the face of COVID and try to think creatively of how we can continue to support the great work in suicide prevention and support our military service veterans and their families. So next slide, please. As we move forward, just wanted to first introduce Dr. Pearl McGee-Vincent. She is a clinical psychologist, and she is joining us from our National Center for PTSD. She was going to help us introduce someone from our team as well, Miss Lily Mells, who is part of our education core at the VA Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention. So before I turn it over to them and have them share a little bit about themselves, just wanted to remind the group that we are recording these sessions for the purpose of those that weren't able to join us today. So we will be recording these sessions. We will also be recording the questions in the chat box in case we ever have to get back to you with any additional follow-up information. And we're really excited to have such a large group joining us today. We had over 100 participants registered for today's session. So obviously there's a lot of interest in this great work that Dr. McGee-Vincent and her group are doing. And we also have over 32 teams represented today. So really, again, great to see how involved and how committed you guys continue to be, especially in the face of COVID. I know there's just a lot of competing demands and shifting priorities. So really, again, on behalf of SAMHSA and the VA, we're eternally grateful for your ongoing commitment to our veterans and their families. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Dr. McGee-Vincent and also to Lily to share a little bit about themselves. And as we do that, just wanted again to remind folks of our disclaimer that today's information and the presentation are the views and the opinions and content expressed in the presentation don't necessarily reflect the views and opinions or policies of SAMHSA or the VA. again, pretty standard disclaimer that you often see in a lot of our presentations. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. McGee, Vincent, and Lily. And thank you guys again for sharing your time and your expertise and knowledge with our teams.
Thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity to present to you all today. I'm Pearl McGee Vincent. I'm a clinical psychologist from the VA's National Center for PTSD, and I'm here to talk to you today about the new safety planning feature in PTSD Coach. I'm joined by my colleague, Katie Uhas, who will be helping me to address some of your questions today. Katie was a key player in the development of the Safety Plan app module and led our user experience testing and stakeholder feedback. And we also have Lily Mells from the Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, who served as a subject matter expert on this project and will be presenting on the next call. So if you haven't downloaded PTSD Coach, I recommend doing it. It's a free app. You can find it in your App Store if you're an iOS or iPhone user, or the Google Play Marketplace if you are an Android user. If you want to try a neat trick, you can hold your phone's camera up to your screen to scan that QR code if your phone has that capability, and that should lead you directly to the download. You can also participate in this discussion and presentation today without having downloaded PTSD Coach, but we wanted to give you that option. All right, so just a little bit of background. So Katie and I are part of the National Center for PTSD's mobile apps team. Our team has been creating mobile mental health apps since 2011, the first of which was PTSD Coach. Our two most recent apps are COVID Coach and Insomnia Coach. So you'll see we've expanded our apps beyond PTSD to include PTSD and related concerns like insomnia, anger, mindfulness. But as the National Center for PTSD, PTSD is still our primary focus. I'm only going to focus on PTSD Coach and specifically the safety plan today, but I just wanted to highlight that we have a full suite of apps and that they fall into two broad categories. So on the left, you have our self-care apps, which can be used by anyone for self-management or self-care for a variety of symptoms and conditions. And on the right, you have our treatment companion apps. So these were things like PE Coach, prolonged exposure therapy coach, which goes along with PE therapy for veterans who are receiving that evidence-based treatment in therapy with a trained provider. And that's the case for all of the treatment companion apps, is that they're really designed to be used as part of treatment as opposed to the self-care apps, which can be used either as an adjunct to treatment or on your own if you're not connected to care or are using an app between sessions, for example, to supplement care. All of our apps are free and available to the public. They can be used by veterans, by civilians, by members of the military, by anybody in the public. All of our apps abide by a strict VA privacy policy, so we do not collect or share any identifiable or personal information. Our apps are all 508 compliant. They're evidence informed. Obviously, not everybody has access to a smartphone or a tablet. According to Pew Research, about 81% of the population now has access to a smart device. So again, these aren't things we can use with every one of our clients, but for those who do have access, and those gaps are narrowing. So folks do have more and more access to these tools, but of course we need to determine whether our patients have access to devices before we recommend them and assess whether or not they are interested in using them. So why mobile mental health apps? So just looking at that graphic to the right, This is sort of a visual representation of one way to look at the gaps that exist in mental health care. So out of all the people with mental health needs, only a portion of those get screened or referred to mental health or follow through with their referral. And of those that make it into mental health treatment, only a portion of those receive an adequate dose of treatment and benefit and sustain those benefits over time. So while mobile mental health apps, of course, do not replace mental health treatment, they can supplement care, as I mentioned, either in between visits by offering in-the-moment coping tools and skills practice. They can also facilitate self-care for individuals across the care continuum, and can reach those individuals who aren't accessing mental health treatment for any number of reasons, potentially serving as a bridge to care or even as primary prevention. All right. So our VA mobile mental health apps are strongly evidence-informed. Studies have shown that apps, including PTSD Coach, are acceptable and usable by the populations they're intended for, including patients and providers. We do have a couple randomized control trials showing some positive outcomes for PTSD Coach in particular, including reduction in symptoms and increase in follow-through with referral to mental health. And that was when PTSD Coach was integrated into a primary care setting. Apologies, this slide was taken from another deck, so the references aren't going to line up to what's in the reference section. Your best bet for seeing a good systematic review of the research done on VA apps is an article, a 2018 article by Christine Gould, G-O-U-L-D, which is in the Journal Psychological Services, or email us. Our email is at the bottom of every slide just about mobile mental health at va.gov, and we can provide more information. Let's see here. So PTSD Coach has the most cumulative downloads of any of our apps. We're getting approximately 5,300 downloads per month. It includes embedded psychoeducation, self-assessments, coping tools, and resources for support. I want to emphasize that you do not have to have a PTSD diagnosis to use PTSD Coach. The app was given a makeover in 2019 and now includes some updated features, including a Spanish language mode. Let's see, PTSD Coach has crisis information embedded so that you can access the Suicide Prevention Lifeline or Veterans Crisis Line directly from the app. So, for example, if you rate a high distress level on one of the self-assessments in the app will prompt you and ask if you want to talk to someone now and give you the option of contacting one of these crisis lines. The crisis support section will give you the option to call 911. There's also the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. The Veterans Crisis Line can be contacted via text or chat directly through the app. And we also include some other helplines, including the National Domestic Violence Hotline and the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Up until this point, there has not been the opportunity to include a full safety plan in any of our apps. So this was our first attempt to do that. So before I dive in to the safety plan, I want to mention that the app was developed with input and review from many, many stakeholders, including the developers of the safety planning intervention, Dr. Barbara Stanley and Greg Brown. We had folks from OMHSP, the Rocky Mountain MIREC in VA, many different stakeholders, the crisis lines. We were able to incorporate many of the suggestions that were made, but there's always room for improvement. So we do welcome your input. And again, our contact information is on every slide, or you can, if we're going through this and you have suggestions, please feel free to type those in. And I see there may be comments and things coming in as I go. Please type away, and I think my colleagues here on the line are going to help me consolidate those, and I'll address questions at the end, or folks, please interrupt me if there's something that I can answer more efficiently as I go, and we can pause for discussion. You can see in that graphic on the left, if you are familiar with the safety planning intervention, which Lily Mells will go into in more detail next time, the digital version does follow the standard 6 steps of the traditional paper safety plan. We did some sort of market research before diving into this, and there are other safety plan apps and online versions out there. You might be familiar with one popular one is called My3, and there's others. But the idea was we really wanted to create something that mirrors the same structure as safety plans that we create with veterans in VA, and to create a VA app that is compliant with our strict privacy standards and isn't sort of mining veteran data, and that's 508 compliant, high quality, et cetera. I should mention that this was developed with funding from the Joint Incentive Fund, and this was part of a larger project focused on connecting veterans and service members to digital resources for mental health by training providers and non-clinical staff to integrate mHealth across the continuum of care in VA and DoD. So this was a subcomponent of that project, which I'm leading in VA. All right, so back to the basics. What is safety planning? So the safety planning intervention is, it's recommended by our VA DoD clinical practice guidelines, and it's widely used in VA as well as outside of VA. It's a brief, structured intervention. The rationale is really to help individuals recognize when they're experiencing warning signs so that they can avert a crisis by using specific, predetermined strategies to prevent them from acting on suicidal thoughts and urges. A safety plan can be used before or during a crisis. It should be brief, it should be easy to read, and it should be in the individual's own words. It should also be accessible. Current practice in VA is that the veteran works with their provider to identify warning signs, coping strategies that they can use, people and places that can provide distraction, support contexts they can rely on and share their safety plan with, how to get professional help, who to contact when they need it, and minimizing access to lethal means. And a good plan using the safety plan intervention should take about 45 minutes to develop. And what happens is the provider and the veteran collaborate to create this. They write up this plan on this two-sided paper form, or the provider enters the information into the electronic health record and prints out a copy for the veteran. And so we really wanted to create a digital version so that veterans could have a mobile option to the paper safety plan to improve access. As an additional option is that paper plan can get lost or not be on you when you need it, or not be as accessible for those who are receiving care more and more now via telehealth, especially during COVID. Of course, we didn't know that COVID was coming when we started planning for this 2 years ago, but it so happened that the release of the safety plan module in late April just sort of coincided with a lot of providers and veterans transitioning to telehealth and needing sort of a mobile option to provide this intervention. So we also wanted to sort of leverage the app-based coping tools like audio-guided relaxation exercises, the ability to also share your plan with loved ones and caregivers at the push of a button, embedded help content to easily assist with potentially creating more robust safety plans. So all of these features that aren't possible with a piece of paper, but are added benefits with an app. We do have some intel that suggests that sometimes clinicians are treating the safety plan as just a form to be filled out instead of a real suicide prevention tool that it is designed to be. So we're thinking that instead of, for those of us who aren't necessarily doing safety plans on a regular basis or have had recent training in the safety plan intervention or have the 40-page provider manual in front of us while we're doing this intervention, to have the app with that help content at the push of a button that can offer tips for how to complete each step can really help providers as well as veterans who may be accessing this on their own, independent of support from a provider. All right. Oh, and I think I referenced one study there from Stanley and Brown that was done with veterans following an ER visit related to a suicide. And those folks were given the safety planning intervention with follow-up, and they saw good outcomes in terms of lower suicidal behaviors over the subsequent 6 months. All right, so getting into the meat of it, the safety plan, if you've downloaded PTSD Coach, if you're on the main screen, you would look at the menu, the lateral menu in the top left. There's 3 horizontal lines I have circled there that's sometimes called the hamburger menu. If you press that, you'll get that menu you see on the left. About halfway down is the safety plan. So you would hit that button, and then you would see a series of intro screens, which you can swipe through to get just the basic intro to orient you to what a safety plan is. You can also skip that if you're already familiar with safety planning and want to get right to it. One of the pieces of feedback that we were not surprised to get from our veterans and stakeholders that served as reviewers was that, boy, that safety plan is buried in PTSD Coach. How can we get quicker access to it? One of the limitations with this being sort of an app within an app is that we couldn't feature it on the main screen according to our developers. So one workaround that we were able to develop is that small thumbs up icon at the bottom of the main safety plan screen there. And if you hit thumbs up, from that point forward, your safety plan will be on your main screen of PTSD Coach, and you can see it circled in red on that screen on the right, so you can access it straight from there instead of having to go through that lateral menu every time. All right, so when you first access the safety plan, you will notice that all of the steps have a white background. Once you have accessed a step, it will turn blue, and once you have completed a step, you will get a check mark next to that step. So I've had times where some steps have 2 parts to them, for instance, entering contacts as well as places. And if I forget one part of a step, I won't get the check mark. So just making sure that those check marks are there is a good way to ensure that you've completed all the components of the plan. So when you go into step 1, which is warning signs, I want to highlight the info button. There's info buttons for every step, and those are where we've embedded all of the help content from the safety planning intervention manual, from information that we gathered from our stakeholders that would be helpful in completing a plan. And you get a pop-up when you first access the plan to remind you to go into those info buttons, because in our stakeholder user feedback, user experience testing, we found that people weren't necessarily intuitively hitting those buttons. So now we have a little bit of queuing embedded in the app. In warning signs, if you're dealing with a paper plan, you just have blank spaces. In the digital version, we did include some pre-populated examples. We found that this could help with queuing for people who are completing this and need some examples. So we included common warning signs that individuals experience, and they can also enter as many custom warning signs as they choose. And under coping strategies, similarly, we chose to include some common coping strategies. Of course, the best safety plans are those that include customized coping tools, or those that are most relevant to the individual creating the plan. So they can do a hybrid of ones that they choose from the list and individualized coping strategies that they enter there. They can also add a tool directly from PTSD Coach. So PTSD Coach, the app, has all of these embedded coping strategies, audio-guided exercises, et cetera. So they can hit add a tool, and instead of just typing or writing like you would in your analog safety plan, do a relaxation exercise, they can actually add an audio-guided relaxation exercise or deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, et cetera, for example, from the app, and hit that button. And when they're using their plan, they can be guided through that exercise. So that's a nice feature that you can only do with an app. In the safety planning intervention, we also encourage folks to list things in the order of how likely they are to use them, or to think about how likely they are to use each strategy. So for example, one of my coping skills might be going to the gym. Am I likely to go to the gym when I'm really in a bad state? No, but I might be more likely to go for a walk outside. So you can actually press down on any of these and reorder them in whatever order you like. So we find that's a handy feature. Step 3 is healthy distractions. This is where you can list custom contacts and places that provide a healthy distraction. Again, the rationale for a safety plan being that our problem-solving abilities and aren't as accessible to us when we're in distress. Oftentimes, urges and crisis states pass over time, and we need strategies and distractions to kind of wait out those moments of distress. And we're not necessarily able to think of them in the moment, but if we have them listed out, who am I going to call? Where am I going to go? We can have those listed out right here in a plan that we've developed when we're in a calm and collected state, ideally with the support of a provider or loved one. Because this is an app, you have the ability to enter contacts directly from your phone or create new contacts. Another piece of feedback that we've gotten is that when you hit add contacts, the app will ask you, is it okay for us to access your contacts? And that freaks some people out, because some people automatically will think, uh-oh, this app is going to be digging through my contacts and reporting my information back to the VA. That is not what is happening. The app, the contact information never under any circumstances will leave your device. The app will just pull in whatever contacts you choose, if you choose to do so, from your contacts app. Because that information is not always enough to comfort people, because they are rightfully concerned about their security and privacy, we are now working on an update that will allow people to just type in their contact information and not integrate with the contacts feature in the phone if the user chooses not to do so. So that's based on feedback, and that is an update that is in progress. Again, you can use the info button for help with this step, and you can also rearrange your contacts or your places. Again, step 4 is entering family and friends who you would contact in a time of crisis, and we encourage folks here to enter specific hospitals, urgent care centers where they would like to be seen if they need to be seen urgently during a time of suicidal crisis. We have some veterans who are very insistent that they be seen at the VA, and some that are very insistent that, please don't take me to the VA if I'm in crisis, take me here instead. So this is an opportunity for them to make those decisions for themselves and delegate what their preferences are. I think that what I just said happens in step 5. Step 4 is family and friends. Step 5, very similarly, but here we're talking about professional contacts, such as emergency rooms, listing your mental health providers, et cetera. Some people will not necessarily be connected to a provider at this point, and there is an info button which will lead them to information about finding local providers and a treatment locator. Same with, I'm going to go back to step 4 for a moment. sometimes we get responses like, I don't have any friends. I've burned all my bridges. And there is within the app links to information about building social support, finding support networks, building your support network. So that's another advantage over, a paper copy where you don't necessarily have that built-in information and resources. Step 6, this was a step that we found was left out of some of the existing safety planning resources online and in other apps. This is the step that involves keeping your environment safe. This can be medication safety, other lethal means safety, firearm safety. For a veteran population, we definitely wanted to make sure to include information on gun safety. A lot of times providers are not trained in having this conversation, or it can invoke defensiveness. So we just wanted to include as much objective information as possible for exploring with veterans and other individuals what their options are for keeping themselves safe, ensuring that they are as least likely as possible to utilize a firearm or other lethal means during a moment of crisis. So there's lots of good information in those info buttons or help buttons that can assist with completing this section. And there's just more screenshots giving examples. And the second part of this step is to enter contact information for individuals that can be of help in completing this step of making your environment more safe. Also, we know with apps that keeping users engaged is an important thing to build in. So after completion of each step, the individual gets an image and a supportive message about their progress. And upon completing an entire draft of the plan, they get another message as well, and an opportunity to provide feedback to the team if they so choose. Another unique feature is the option to export the safety plan. This is optional for individuals. We do not pull any identifiable data off of individuals' phones, nor do we have that capacity. But if somebody wants to, they can export a PDF copy of their plan to themselves so that they have a backup copy if they lose their device, for example, or if they want to have a backup copy on their computer or on another device. They can export a copy, for example, to the family and friends that they listed in this step where they list their support contacts. They can export a copy to their providers as well. In VA, we do not encourage veterans to email providers directly, but they do have the option of attaching their completed safety plan to a secure message and sending that through My Health eVet, our secure messaging platform there. So a lot easier to share than a paper copy. And that's what it looks like, pretty much exactly carbon copy what the paper plan would look like, but it's printed out on a PDF there. Other features, there's no limit to the number of entries that you can enter for each step, so you're not bound by the number of lines on the paper plan. You can also set reminders to review or update your safety plan. So you can review it monthly or more frequently or less frequently. A lot of folks have had to update their plans recently in light of COVID, some of the coping resources and places that you would normally go to have a safe distraction are maybe no longer open or available. So we've had to shift to more indoor coping strategies while sheltering in place. Your support network may change over time. You might go through a breakup or have a change in providers. And so just having that reminder to review your plan, make sure everything is up to date. Also review your warning signs, because the safety plan is only effective when you're remembering to use it when you're experiencing warning signs. So that feature is built in. Here. Just a couple of frequently asked questions we've gotten about the safety plan. This first one came from VA. Does it change procedures for how providers complete safety plans in VA? No, everything is done exactly as you always have done it. It's just that the digital version becomes an option for the veteran to also enter a digital version of their safety plan into their phone if they have a smartphone and are interested in downloading and using this feature of PTSD Coach. How does it fit with the paper version? Again, we tried to make it as close as possible to the paper version with a few added features. Are users supposed to complete this on their own? This is a really good question. So again, the safety plan intervention was designed to be a provider-guided intervention done in collaboration with the patient. However, we found that there are already several publicly available versions of safety plan apps or online safety plans that are patient-facing and available to anyone. So if an individual is motivated, it's not difficult to find one of these tools and fill it out on your own or with a family member. So I would like to think that we have added to that pool of safety planning resources something that is vetted by experts, has robust help content, and adheres to the strict VA privacy standards as far as the app goes, so that those who are not connected to care or have limited connections to care now have a high quality option for exploring safety planning if they are so motivated. But yes, ideally safety planning is done with a trained provider, and the app in various places does encourage users to work with their provider if they are able to. Why isn't this a standalone app? So we're getting this question more and more. I don't work with a PTSD population. People who don't have PTSD aren't necessarily going to find this safety plan buried in PTSD Coach. My original plan was to put the safety plan module in as many of our apps as possible. Since we've gotten so much feedback and a lot of requests for the safety plan being a standalone app, we are now actively pursuing that, and it is on the docket for the next fiscal year for our team to create a standalone safety planning app. So it'll be based on what we've created, hopefully incorporating additional feedback that we're getting ongoing, and then made available as a free standalone app for the public. I'm going to pull up some resources here. The TMS course and Advanced Safety Planning Intervention SharePoint, I believe, are only available behind the VA firewall. However, the resources at the bottom are available and accessible to anyone. So if you're interested in learning more about safety planning and additional safety plan resources, you can check those out. Again, our email address for those who have questions or want follow-up info about this app or any of our apps, mobilementalhealth@va.gov. That email will go to me, it will go to Katie, it will go to our development team. So between us all, we're usually able to answer any and every question. We don't typically offer clinical guidance, but technical feedback and feedback about updates or suggestions to improve our apps we can usually handle. Our website there for app descriptions, videos, and links. We have a free monthly CE lecture series that I host on all matters of technology, typically relating to veterans and mental health care. And we have a different guest lecturer each month. We also have free materials, rack cards, prescription pads, and posters, other items available at the government printing office link that you see there. And of course, you can download any of our apps on the App Store or Google Play. I think almost all of our apps are now available on both platforms. Okay, and this references needs to be updated, but that's all I've got for the content portion of the presentation. And I think folks I haven't been looking at the chat or Q&A at all, so I'm ready for questions.
Thank you very much, Pearl. And this is Donna Alagata again. Well, we have been looking at the chat, and actually a few people sent questions over individually. So it's been really interesting because as we've gone through this, you've actually covered a couple of things. But we'll look at a few of the key patterns and main questions again. So it seems as though your issue about the safety plan, or the question was from Caitlin Thompson and from two other people as to whether it was used as a standalone or there was a standalone version, was what I got. And you seem to explore how it came about and your plans for next year. Do you want to say anything more about that? It seems like folks are feeling like they might benefit from one that was just focused on safety planning alone without that PTSD part.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful suggestion. Again, this mobile safety plan came about just from a project that I submitted funding for, and I thought it would be a good idea. And I work with the mobile app scheme, and I said, hey, let's put it in PTSD Coach, try it out. It's our most downloaded app, and go from there. And based on feedback from the field, it does make sense to go forth and make it a standalone app. So thank you for reinforcing that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
There was also a question, a few questions actually, that seem to be related to the interface and the role of families, peers, veteran service organizations, peer specialists. And you went over how they could interface with this app. I think that there's different levels of practice in different places, and it seems as though that peers and veterans are playing, and family members are playing a larger role in reviewing safety plans and talking over safety plans with service members, veterans, and military families, and in rural communities especially. Any more thoughts about that topic? We're clear that it's to be developed by a provider, but I guess what's happening is that folks are needing support at different points.
Yes. We have people that can benefit from safety planning all across the care continuum. And while in VA, the safety plans are initially developed with a trained provider, I like to think of the digital version as no different, again, in practice as the paper version or the analog version, where ideally family members are incorporated into the plan, and they know that their veteran has a safety plan and what their role in it is. I just gave a presentation to a group of peer support specialists nationally in VA. Now, in VA, peer support specialists do not have a formal role in creating the initial safety plans with veterans. However, they may be the person that the veteran is interacting with most, and they may use their role in sharing their lived experience with safety planning, with coping, to review the plan with the veteran and to offer support. So it's not something that is strictly done one time in the office of or virtually with a licensed professional and the veteran, and gets tucked away to never be looked at again. Ideally, the family and peers and other people in the support network are interacting with the veteran around their plan, reviewing it, getting incorporated in the different steps, especially the environmental safety step. And so I hope that answers the question, but please give follow-up questions if you need more clarification.
Sure, and I'm glad you brought that up, because any question that anyone types in this chat box, we're happy to have our subject matter experts. The TA Center will work to make sure that you get an answer back by phone or in writing. So feel free, folks, if you have observations, thoughts, or some things that you want to comment on that might influence the shaping of the future work, feel free to enter your issues and questions there.
And Lily is on the call too.
Yeah,
and Lily Mills is going to be presenting next week more on the safety planning intervention itself. So I think she'll do a deeper dive into some of that. But please feel free, Lily or Dr. Villarreal, to chime in at any point with any additional thoughts.
Lily, are you there?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the risk stratification that providers use to determine whether it's the right time to develop a safety plan. And then, like she said, going a little bit deeper into exactly what should actually go into the safety plan. And I'll also provide some additional resources as well.
Thank you. And so we've done this in a two-part way, and Lily will be going into a lot of the details of how to implement the best practice, the nature of the practice, and how it's actually implemented in the community on a community level. And of course, the use of the app ties in beautifully, but it actually will go pretty broad next week, will be, is there a slide, next slide with the flyer and the date? I don't know if that follows. My computer has been freezing up, guys, so that's why I can't see it. Is there a next slide? There it is. Great, thank you. So you see session 2 with a picture of Lily, who's been gracious enough to answer some of the questions in the chat box. Thank you, Lily. And you can see that it's what works, strategies to consider tailoring safety planning and further enhancing SMBF suicide prevention on July 20th from 2 to 4. So we're going to be taking more of a dive and continuing this work on safety planning at that point. I did get a question which seems like there's still a burning desire to address this issue, Lily, so maybe we can do it a little more next week. Folks are saying that there's templates available online, and people have been printing them out and using them in the community. Often we have to talk these things over a little bit and say, well, gee, what is the best practice? What's suggested? What does the research show us? What science show us? What do we want people doing, and what would everyone's role be to be sure that we're not, in terms of fidelity of the practice or, anything that we're doing the best standards. Lily, do you have anything that you want to say about that? Because I'm getting the sense that folks are having challenges with access to providers, and I don't know where the issue is, but that's probably, I'm reading your comment back about helping people to get connected with a mental health provider, is important. Do you want to say any more?
Yeah, it's really important to get connected with the mental health provider, especially if they're experiencing a lot of triggers and some difficulties. You really want to make sure that that individual is connected.
Sure. And so maybe some of our discussion has to be on the strategies, options for that, from vet centers to whatever we have, but we will talk some more about that. Thank you.
And we don't have any evidence yet, but we are putting in for funding to kind of to test the digital safety plan versus the traditional method and see if they're equivalent.
Okay, thank you for that information. Can I check with my colleagues? Is there anything I missed in the participants Q&A section or anything else in terms of questions? I think we got them all that I can see, but I have to be honest, my chat box has been freezing up, so for a bumpy start, and it's been hard to type. So anyone have anything that they want to raise? We'll pause for a second. Or any of the subject matter experts have anything to add? Any insights or anything we forgot to reinforce?
This is Katie. Can you hear me?
Yes, Katie. Thank you.
Hi. I just wanted to add, I did type in the chat box for people, but we do have a lot of leeway, I would say, as we start to design the standalone version of the app. So for people who are familiar with the safety plan, who have suggestions or thoughts about features they would like to see included, please do email us. As Pearl mentioned, we engaged with a number of stakeholders from across VA within our Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, within the Office of Suicide Prevention specifically. We also worked with people at the Veterans Crisis Line, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, Lily Melz, who's on the call, Edgar Villarreal, who's on the call, lots and lots of people to make sure that we had the best, most succinct information in the module that's in PTSD Coach as possible. And then when we rolled out the version in PTSD Coach, we did send it out to all of these stakeholders to have them test it and tell us, what do you think? How did this work for you? Are there things that we should tweak? Are there places where we should put in more information or less information? And we were able to implement some of those changes, and some additional changes are forthcoming in the PTSD Coach version. But we were also constrained by the design of putting it inside of PTSD Coach, as Pearl mentioned. And we'll have a lot more flexibility with the standalone version. So if there are things that you would really like to see, please do email us, and we'll be able to hopefully incorporate some of those. And similarly, if you would just like to be notified when the standalone version goes live, or if you would like to test it out, we are always looking for people to test out the early versions of them. You can email us to let us know that as well, and we'll put you on a short list that we can make sure you get the announcements.
If you would like to join our list to get the announcements for our monthly continuing education lecture series on a variety of topics, not just the safety plan, but all related to mental health and technology and veterans, you can also email us at mobilementalhealth@va.gov to join that. And we do reply to every single email, so don't be shy.
Thank you. And this question came up again, and it's in the Q&A box, so I'm going to just raise it. Do you have to be a clinician to complete a safety plan? And then I had one, can an individual use it as a tool for themselves?
So again, really good question. So in VA, we have a list of licensed clinical providers that are that provider types or discipline types that are designated to do the safety planning intervention with veterans as part of their clinical care. If you are doing the safety planning intervention, that is an intervention that is a clinical intervention that's typically done with a provider. However, there is nothing stopping an individual or an unlicensed individual from accessing any number of safety plan templates, self-guided, veteran-facing, patient-facing safety planning resources, including, like, you could go to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and they'll give you the template for the safety plan as something that you can do on your own. So public guidance, I think, is different from VA guidance. I like to think, I am not aware of any risks involved with an individual creating their own safety plan. I like to think that the version that we've created in the mobile app increases the likelihood, or could increase the likelihood, that they create a plan that is robust and is based on what we know works. So again, the preferred method is for it to be a provider-led intervention with somebody who's done the training and knows what to do. There's also nothing stopping or no guidance against an individual coming across these resources in the wild, and ideally enlisting a provider if they have one, a family member or a loved one if they have one, or themselves if they don't have anyone but happen to be motivated to get something in place so that they can do something less tragic next time they have a crisis. And so that is the way that I look at it. And so that's, we created that with this in mind. If you think of, we created this with that in mind. So if you think of the concentric circles diagram that I presented on one of the earlier slides, you know, there are so many veterans, so many civilians, so many individuals out there that just aren't accessing a trained mental health provider. And that doesn't mean that they should be deprived of the opportunity to create a self-guided plan to keep themselves safe.
And the next step, and it might be something we'll be discussing even more again, because folks are enthusiastic about having this be owned by the veteran and service member and their family, and not something, the word that was sent to me in the text was done to them, so that they're really participating. And I think from the way you described it, this is something that is worked on as a team and collaboratively.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And the creators of this safety plan, Doctors Greg Brown, Barbara Stanley, and Greg Brown would say exactly that. This is not just a form to be filled out. This is not something that's done to the veteran. This is a collaborative thing that's done ideally in the veteran's own words, in their own language, with their preferences and their own lived experience in mind. So the last thing that we want to do is for it to be treated just like a form, or it to be used as something that is done to the veteran. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So I see questions about retrieving the PowerPoint and the audio, and I had typed into the chat box before that everyone who's on this call will have access to that. And how that happens is Chantel, who's wonderful at these things on our team, is going to be responding to the folks who signed in. If you have a real concern, or you have someone who signed on or you want to include, make sure we have your email. And most people, when you're registered, we have that. So we will follow up. If you have a specific question, please don't hesitate to type it in the chat or send it to the SMBF-TA Center box, and we'll make sure we get it back to you. And bring your questions also to the session that's coming. It's not required that everyone that's on this call be on that one, or vice versa. If you know someone who could benefit, you know, that would be really, really very helpful. And I guess I'm seeing that there was one more question. Are there any prompts for the initial plan? I see this coming up now, to be reviewed, updated on a regular basis to address change in individual circumstances?
It's a really good question. And so so there's no prompt for the initial plan to even be created, because it's not everyone who, it's the version that's in PTSD Coach now, not everyone who accesses PTSD Coach will need or want a safety plan. So once you have created a plan, or even a partial plan, you have the option to set reminders for yourself to review the plan at an interval that you select, whether it's weekly, monthly, et cetera. We did think about embedding automatic reminders, and we had a lot of back and forth about it. And we ultimately decided that we didn't want to nag people. We didn't want the app to be kind of aversive and like, have you checked your safety plan? Have you reviewed your safety plan? So it's under their control. If they want to set a reminder, they can do so either within the app or any other way that they choose to set reminders for themselves.
Oh, that's very helpful too. Thank you. Well, I see that we've gone through all the questions in the chat, so I think it's time to really just say thank you to everybody who attended this. I know that you're all juggling multiple tasks and doing things in a challenging and busy time on a Monday, so it was great that so many people were able to attend. to our subject matter experts, thank you very much for your teamwork on this and the really wonderful and excellent information. Folks will be, back in touch, again about this. And I want to also, could we show the next slide? There are a series of events. There's one coming on screening and assessment. There we go. And it's called Engaging Service Members and Veterans at Risk, Best Practice Tools and Resources for SMBF Screening and Suicide Risk Assessment. And that actually is going to be done by Dr. Bridget Matarazzo on July 29th from 1 to 3. Another excellent session. We have several others coming. We'll keep you posted, and you'll be able to see them featured as we go along. So mark your calendars. And if you have any questions about future events, just call us, and we'll be able to share. There's probably about 4 or 5 of them on the flyers that are circulating now if you need anyone added to our list to get invited. So there are upcoming events. These all tie in with the Governor's and Mayor's Challenge interagency plans and the priorities that you're developing strategies for. This is the implementation part. It's important for you to be looking at how to be really working these into your next steps so that things are adapted and implemented and taken into your community. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Pearl and Lily and Kate, for attending. And I'm going to turn over.
Thank you.
Just don't know if Edgar's still on. Edgar, are you there? If you want to say anything before we wind up. I think he's on. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And let us know if you have any questions, and we'll be back in touch with the material.
Thank you, Donna, and I look forward to next week.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Oh, there you are.
Bye.
Bye-bye.